Most obvious question. Is the onus only on the Hindu community to protect the environment? Because if you selectively apply the law, then it appears so. And I have with me Advocate Sai Deepak. Mr. Sai Deepak, firstly, look, if there is mounting evidence, and that too is contestable, that bursting crackers on Diwali sends a lot more people to hospital, etc., by all means, fair enough, curb it. I spoke to Sri Ravi Shankar and he says, you can't ban anything, you can curb them. Say that certain restrictions, 1 hour, 2 hours, etc., and then be sure to enforce. That's what his view was. Nonetheless, I want to ask you, I get this feeling that, and I've mentioned all these examples, that the onus is only on the Hindus constantly. Do you get this feeling too?
Namaste, Rahul. Broadly on your question, I think that is the position. I think there's a bit of an echo.
We can hear you clearly. Yes.
Yes, you can?
Yeah.
Okay. In fact, I think a couple of facts need to be presented before your viewers so that they understand what exactly is happening. But before that, a fair and full disclosure. I have argued and I continue to represent firecracker manufacturers before the Supreme Court in the ongoing proceedings. So if that makes me a biased and interested party, so be it. I think I'd leave it to the viewers to deal with the facts. Point number one, I think you must understand that the petition that was filed before the Supreme Court, which is Arjun Gopal versus Union of India, raises a host of issues, which includes firecracker, a ban on firecrackers, but it's not limited to that particular issue. It also speaks of stubble burning. If you look at the number of orders that have been passed by the Supreme Court in that particular petition, the majority of the orders focus primarily on the firecracker ban as opposed to the other issues raised in that particular petition. That's point number one. Two, IIT Kanpur, IIT Delhi, and I think a couple of other reports have been placed before the Supreme Court to clearly show that firecrackers don't even contribute to the top 11 factors which contribute to pollution in the NCR. And these are reports which get as decent as possible. Three, we have presented reports, and I'm not quoting WhatsApp University, credible reports of scientists from NASA, specifically who have identified what is the airflow pattern and what is the reason for the increased particulate matter as far as Delhi and the northern part of this country is concerned. And they've clearly shown over 25% of the increase in the particulate matter in this particular region is because of increased cultivation of basmati rice in Punjab and Haryana. And you must realize that traditionally speaking, basmati rice in both these places, in both these states, have been cultivated only in a handful of districts. But because there is a certain premium both in terms of MSP and other value, and there is an export market to be met in the Middle East as well as in Europe, they have ramped up the cultivation of basmati rice, which significantly contributes to the stubble, apart from other particulate matter. Now, obviously, nobody in this country has the guts to go after farmers. That much has been established out of the fiasco with the farm laws, right? And nobody has the guts to go after tobacco manufacturers. Nobody has the guts to go after the construction mafia. Nobody has the guts to go after the, let's say, automobile manufacturers. The softest target possible obviously happened to be the firecracker manufacturers for all practical reasons. Why? Because they're not exactly organized. They don't constitute a vote bank. Sivakasi is a remote part of the country, and they can be done away with. We even pointed out to the extent that you're looking at a workforce of 8 lakhs, almost 8 lakhs, and a revenue of close to 6,000 crores. We may assume that this particular activity is seasonal because we burst it seasonally, but this is a year-round activity. Okay? And if you look at the summary manner in which state governments across the board, no government is an exception to this, what they do is that they grant licenses, they do everything under the sun, and barely a week before the festival is when the clampdown begins. People who invest their hard-earned money in getting these licenses in one way or the other are then left high and dry. This is the nature of the beast. Stubble burning as an issue needs to be specifically tackled. And in fact, to be fair, even the Supreme Court has said, why can't governments offer some kind of subsidy? Because it's not possible for each farmer to invest in the machine that is needed for this. Why don't you look at creating certain community options, so to speak? Plus, the firecracker manufacturing industry, you have to understand, falls within the very same regulation that governs explosives. Okay? And therefore, there are bodies such as PESO and other organizations which heavily regulate it. the industry has come forward for further regulation, offering further solutions, which has come from NEERI and other institutes, including IIT and other institutions. Despite that, we are looking at a situation where this happens to be one of the most bandied industries in the country for all. I don't know what is that specific animus here. Allow me to say something which perhaps is communal and unsecular. When an entire industry goes out of business and people who belong to that industry are put out of their livelihoods, I'm sorry to say they become vulnerable to proselytization, especially in a state like Tamil Nadu, which is a reality. And there are multiple realities to be dealt with here. Okay? And when I presented the IIT report before a division bench of the Supreme Court a couple of months ago, maybe last year, I was being told, we don't need an IIT report. We will use our common sense. Please tell us, why is it that we should rely on an IIT report when we know for a fact that the moment you burst firecracker, you're increasing the pollution level. The scientific argument, which I hope your viewers will understand, is this. When pollution levels are already at a certain level, thanks to year-round pollution caused by every other factor which has got nothing to do with the firecracker industry, and during that particular period, somebody bursts firecrackers, you're adding to that, over and above that. However, we even presented the solution that during this particular period, have certain specific time windows. Come out with restrictions with respect to communal bursting, so on and so forth, cast even more obligations. The Supreme Court went to the extent of saying that we will ban barium, which happens to be the oxidizer which is used for the manufacture of firecrackers, when there is no stable substitute for barium anywhere in the world. There is no other jurisdiction that does this. And therefore, we entered into NDAs with state departments to add additives which reduce the component. The overall composition of firecrackers was reduced by 30%. All of this was done. And still, this happens to be the industry that is constantly in the dock. Now, I'll give you one more instance and then you decide this. There is a judgment of the Supreme Court called In Re Sound. I think this is with respect to the that was put with respect to the firecrackers. You take a look at that particular judgment. I'm happy to share the judgment with your viewers. In 8 lines, without any discussion of any scripture, any evidence, the Supreme Court summarily says that bursting of firecrackers is a mere celebratory activity which has got no ritualistic significance and has got nothing to do with the Hindu religion. This is a statement that the Supreme Court made in 8 lines without any adjudication of evidence. And then we had to present document after document after document to show what is the scriptural relevance. That how the nature of the activity is different in the north and the south. And why is it that bursting of firecrackers is important for people coming from the south? Because we celebrated primarily as Naraka Chaturdashi and not as Diwali. There is a difference between the north and the south. All these examples were given. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say this, Delhi becomes the prism to understand the rest of the country even when it comes to Diwali. I can still understand that Delhi has a peculiar problem with respect to air pollution, therefore it needs special attention. But what is the point of a countrywide ban? It's not as if the air quality levels across the country are the same. That must be left to the discretion of state governments. It's not as if every country in the, every state or city in this country suffers from the very same problems as Delhi. So even when it comes to air quality, Delhi becomes the benchmark. These are the problems.
Well,